You know what separates a good brow artist from a great one? It is not the coloring, it is not the final result. It is this, the sketch, the foundation. If your sketch is messy, if you have lines going everywhere, you are already lost before you even start. And I see this all the time with newer artists. They come to my workshops and their sketches look like a roadmap. Lines crossing, marks everywhere, and then they wonder why the final result is not clean. Today I want to show you my technique for building a clean brow sketch, and honestly, once you get this right, everything else just falls into place. So first things first, let me talk about the tools. I am using a powder pencil from Kaskaderka. It is matte, it is soft, and it gives you this beautiful precise line without dragging the skin. A lot of artists use regular cosmetic pencils, and those can work, but powder pencils just give you so much more control. And then for cleanup, I have my flat, straight brush from OKO. I love this brush because the edge is really sharp, it is firm but not too stiff. These two together are the secret. You need two brushes for this technique, one to draw, one to clean. A lot of artists try to do everything with one tool, and honestly, that is where the mess starts. Now, the key principle here, and this is something I always tell my students, is one continuous line. Do not make short little strokes. Do not create multiple marks and try to connect them later. One smooth, continuous line following the natural border of the brow. This is so important because every extra line you add is potential confusion. You end up with this cluttered sketch where you cannot even tell which line is the actual shape anymore. I had a student once who would make maybe 15 small marks per brow and then try to figure out which ones were right. That is not sketching, that is guessing. Keep it simple, one line, clean and confident. So after I lay down that first line along the bottom edge, immediately I switch to my second brush and start cleaning it up. This is the two brush technique that changed everything for me. Honestly, you draw with one, you refine with the other. And what happens is you get this incredibly thin, precise graphic line that shows you exactly where the shape is. No guessing, no squinting at the brow trying to figure out which mark matters. And by the way, always stretch the skin slightly when you clean. It gives you a much smoother edge and helps you see what is actually happening underneath the hair. Now I am working on the upper line of the framework, and here is something a lot of beginners do not realize. The upper line is just as important as the lower one. It defines the thickness of your brow, the arch where the apex sits. If you get the bottom line perfect but the top line is off, the whole shape looks wrong. The distance between your upper and lower lines at different points literally creates the shape. Thicker in the body, thinner in the tail, with that nice gradual taper. So take your time with this. Stretch the skin gently, keep it taut, and draw that clean, continuous line along the top edge. And there it is. First brow is done. You can see the framework, the outline. Clean, minimal, no extra marks. This is what we are going for. Now here is the fun part. We do the second brow. And you know what? This is actually where most artists struggle. Getting the second brow to match the first one. They are sisters, not twins, right? We have all heard that saying, but honestly, the closer they are to twins, the happier your client is going to be. So I always look at specific landmarks, the starting point, the apex position, the tail end, and I try to mirror those as closely as possible. Same approach on this side, one continuous line along the natural shape. I always start with the lower border first because that is the line your client is going to notice the most. It is the one right next to the eye, it frames the face. If this line is shaky or uneven, it does not matter how perfect everything else is, so take your time with it. And then clean with that second brush. Pull away any excess pigment, sharpen that edge. You know, I sometimes spend more time cleaning than I do drawing. And that is totally fine. That is the whole point of this technique. Now I am forming the gradient in the front of the brow. This is where the shape transitions from the head of the brow into the body. You want this to be smooth, soft, natural looking. Nobody wants a brow that looks like it was stamped on, right? The front should have that gentle fade, that soft beginning. And you achieve this in the sketch by being very precise about where your lines start and how much pressure you use. This is actually one of the trickiest parts because the hair at the front of the brow tends to be finer and more sparse, so you need to work with what nature gave your client. Let me talk about the apex for a second, because this is one of those things that can make or break a brow shape. The apex is the highest point of the arch, and where you place it completely changes the expression of the face. Too far in and the brows look surprised, almost startled. Too far out and they look droopy, like they are sliding off the face. I always look at the natural bone structure, the brow bone, and work with what is already there. You are enhancing, not inventing, a completely new shape. And honestly, trends come and go. Remember when everybody wanted that super high arch? Now it is all about soft, natural arches. Work with the bone structure and you will never go wrong, no matter what the trend is. So now I am doing my symmetry check, looking at both brows together, comparing the arches, the tails, the starting points. And this is where that clean sketch really pays off, because when your lines are minimal and precise, it is so much easier to spot any differences. If you had 10 lines on each brow, how would you even compare? This is exactly why the one-line technique works so well. You can step back, look at both brows, and immediately see if something needs adjusting. Just a few final touches now. A little refinement on the tail, making sure the endpoints match on both sides. The tail is actually really tricky because it is where the skin is thinnest and the hair gets sparse. A lot of artists make the tail too long or too thin, and it ends up looking unnatural. I like to keep it proportional, following the natural direction of hair growth. And do not forget, the tail should never drop below the starting point of the brow. That is a classic rule, and it is there for a reason. And there you go, clean sketch construction, finished. Both brows shaped, precise outlines, ready for the next step, which is the actual coloring. And this is the thing I love about this technique. When your sketch is this clean, the coloring becomes almost effortless. You know exactly where to apply. You know exactly where the boundaries are. No second guessing, no panic, just confidence. If you are learning brow work, please invest time in your sketching. It is the most underrated skill in this profession. Everyone wants to jump straight to the coloring, straight to the final look. But this right here, this clean foundation, this is what makes everything possible.